We got Beat Bop Boop who says, do you think this will have any effect on Zack Snyder coming back? Could we finally get the air cut? Any possibilities with this appointment? I'm going to lean towards no. Um, that's one thing is like I've been hearing for the longest time they've wanted James Gunn to take over. Zack Snyder's name is not a name that comes up very often, and I keep telling people this that they're really not high up on getting him back. There was never any big huge plan to get him back that I know of personally. Now I'm not saying that wasn't a possibility in the cards. I'm not saying they won't give him his Batman story on HBO Max or something like that with Ben Affleck, or maybe to do some kind of like
That was
miniseries.
actually
But
Ben Affleck's own.
yeah, I was gonna say that was
own
actually
story.
Ben Affleck's anyway. So at
So,
this point,
the
there's
chances
really
of that happening are very.
and the most, and this is the thing that I've been saying the last couple of days that I heard the most they really talked about it was always a dead end. It was never getting a sequel, and a lot of people never understood why Zack set it up with all this loose end stuff. In fact, the stupid part is most of the money that was spent when he got money from Warner Brothers was spent shooting those scenes when there was no real intention to go forward with this then, let alone I mean, it had to have been a massive hit, and it wasn't, unfortunately. Yeah, it got some people to subscribe to HBO Max. Yes, it has a very loud fan base, but they only sold about less than $20 million worth of discs. That's not enough to justify the amount of money that was spent on this movie.
They
to
kind of
recalibrate
fixed
it.
Steppenwolf a bit.
I mean, again, granted, it was nice to have, but there's a reason they were referring to it as Zack Snyder's trilogy from the start. And that's what I was trying to tell people. I mean, I wanted to believe otherwise too, but the further and further this got along, and Zack's off at Netflix now doing his thing, you're starting to see the stories. And the bigger problem is part of it's Zack's fault because he got a publicity group involved in this. So as far as Warner is concerned, it's all diluted. Like they have no idea how big the fan base really is, if it really does exist, because they don't know because of that crap. And I think Script has pointed out before too that a lot of the big donators to a lot of stuff a lot of the donators to stuff, there's like a few that are just big people, like they put a lot into it as opposed to a lot of people putting a little bit in, kind of thing.
Oh, so yeah, you see the numbers are average between 500 and 1,000 people on some of the campaigns, and most of them are very, very small numbers, and there's a handful that are huge numbers that reach that goal.
Yeah.
So it's really suspicious that one person would donate like $1,200.
And the bigger problem overall, and the bigger problem overall was the Batman. And I kept trying to tell people that before that movie came out, because I had a lot of Snyder fans who were like all hyped up on it. I'm like, if you're a Snyder fan, don't go see that. I'm not telling you not to see a movie, but I'm telling you right now that if this movie does well, then I guarantee you that's the end of the Snyderverse. Because once they see that people are willing to go see a movie that's not connected with that stuff, they're not going to care anymore. But they got mixed signals from that.
I think the Batman, what its biggest success was the money they saved on lighting.
Well, that went into paying the crew for when they weren't working with COVID. Basically,
yeah. I mean, a movie that really didn't have any lights in it. I mean, that was a quite. Oh, what's happening?
It did have a sweet red filter, though.
And I don't want to, and I'm just saying, because if it had made $1 billion, then we'd be doing a complete reset, right? From here out, we would have a complete reset. If it had flopped or made less than $500 million, then we would be getting in the Snyderverse right now, probably.
Part of the problem with the Snyderverse
that's not what happened.
It's really not a complete universe. It's still very much contained in Zack Snyder's vision and style. Whereas what Gunn is doing, I think he has a more expansive ability to have multiple different looks and experiences based on the properties.
Well, and here's the thing with that whole thing is, I think that Zaslav has never hid the fact that they're not going back to the Snyderverse. He has said consistently, we are resetting. Look at what the Suicide Squad was. It was basically a reset. And that's why I think that they did that, is because they saw that he could both pick up where things were left off, use characters that were there before, and introduce a new tone and group of characters at the same time, and do it successfully with critics, at least. Now, the audience is a little bit different story, because not a lot of people saw the Suicide Squad. But
There's a
people
lot of
did-
reasons for that.
Yeah.
I mean, the timing of it was horrible. The
Yeah.
regime at the time released it at the same moment on HBO Max as it went in the theaters. I mean, it was the previous regime. They completely screwed that up.
So there's a lot of different factors that go into that. But the one thing that does have a little bit more pure numbers was a show you just finished watching, Peacemaker.
Yeah.
And from what I had been hearing, and Andre had heard similarly from, I guess, somebody else, was that was a big deal for them, and it did very well, and they were very happy with it. And from that point on is where I kept hearing I don't remember if I said it specifically, but one of the terms I kept hearing is they wined and dined 69 James Gunn as much as they could at this point. They're just praying and hoping he takes the damn job because he's the one they want. That's what I kept hearing. And I kept saying to people, he's the one they want, but I don't think he wants the job from what we kept hearing. And yes, that's the part that took me by surprise, is that he actually took the job. But Script and I talked about it quite a bit last night on the show. And we both came to a few conclusions as to how this could have come to be and how we feel like he may go forward with it. And we also know a little bit about Peter Safran. We looked into him a little bit more.
I think Safran was what maybe put it over the edge.
I agree.
Well, that's just
a good partner. He's got a good partner in Safran.
Yeah, Safran doesn't seem like somebody who's going to step on his toes at all.
Well, Safran's James Gunn's manager. So, I mean, his responsibility is to make sure he gets the best out of his client. And now he's also a partner with him running the business side of DC. He has many years in comedy, but he started to really make a lot of more money in the horror side of things. And he's got some overlap with Walter Hamada as well, because they co-produced a bunch of stuff, Conjuring and Annabelle's and things of that nature. So yeah, it's a good team. It makes sense because even I was supportive. Like when people would say, "Oh, Jon Favreau, James Gunn, they should be taking over." It's like, well, no, they're creatives. They don't like the business side of things. They're not going to take on that level of responsibility. And I think Warner Brothers realized that and said, "Okay, listen, creative direction is you. The business side will be who you think is best." And I think James Gunn said, "Well, my manager would be the best. He's made my career blow up over the last decade. He could probably do the same with Warner Brothers." Yeah, and I think that's how they agreed to the terms.
As far as the Ayer cut, though, I wouldn't say that's impossible yet. They may throw that on HBO Max just because. I'm surprised they haven't yet. That's the only thing, is the longer we are from the Snyder cut and they haven't dropped it yet, I think the chances are slimmer. But Script Doctor has told me several times over that, as far as he knows, that version is not nearly as different as everybody thinks it is.
Well, yeah, Ayer wasn't rewritten. He if he had to do rewrites, he did them himself, because I was in props and set deck on that film, and we liked everybody who we were working with. We just didn't like what we were making. We complained about it. Like, this is kind of lousy.
And Gunn rewrote that movie, so there's no going back to the Ayer version.
No,
I mean that. Oh my gosh, that is such a fun movie.
Yeah, the second one, the first one, the Ayer cut. I mean, if it is released, it's just as a novelty, basically, nothing else. Like, it's
that's
not
what I'm saying.
Anything.
Yeah,
it's just a novelty for those that want it. And I say, yeah, sure, why not? Just drop it. It's not going to get any waves or anything.
It's not.
No one cares. A real Suicide Squad right now belongs to James Gunn, obviously.
Well, and that's where, like, if people go, well, obviously the Snyder cut was a hit. It was a hit. It was a hit. No, the proof would be in the pudding. If the Snyder cut was such a big hit, the Ayer cut would have been right on its heels. Why? Because that fucker was done already. It didn't need any extra money really put into it. Not nearly the baggage that came along with the Snyder cut in any way, shape, or form. They simply just had to throw it out there. Maybe a little bit of post-production sweetening.
Well, to be fair, though, the previous administration, they didn't want to, and they made this clear before it was released.
No, but I guarantee you, if the Snyder cut would have been the big hit that they were hoping for, we would have got the Ayer cut right after it on its heels, because that was done already, right? Like, it's like 80% done. It just needs its finishing touches, is all.
My only argument against that was, notwithstanding what you think of Snyder's vision, it's cinematic, whereas the first Suicide Squad wasn't cinematic at all. It was just a little bit better than a CW production. So I don't.
Emphasis on little.
Yes.
Yep.
And so I wouldn't understand the value of re-editing that. And especially when you see James Gunn's Suicide Squad, that's cinematic. Now, obviously there was more money, but you also had Stallone as a shark. I mean, the level of hipness and fun casting is, you can just see what Gunn is doing. And it's and Kevin Bacon in the Christmas special, Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special. Again, the guy is just ripping so hard. Like, it's fantastic to see this level of cultural acuity that James Gunn has right now. I mean, I'm just so impressed with his level of humor, and we can get into the, some of the writing that he did in Peacemaker that just puts to shame a lot of the better, well-known and popular MCU properties. He really knows what a callback is.
I agree. I mean, Peacemaker, for those that haven't seen it, it's the best series to come out in a long time. And where superheroes are concerned, I would say that it's one of, if not the best series ever. I mean, it's right up there with the first season of Netflix on Daredevil. Sorry, Daredevil on Netflix.
I would say so. And if we're warning spoilers, but I give John Cena terrific credit for...
He was so good.
No, yes, and willing to do the dirtiest, worst things in a show. And I'm sure without complaining. I give him such credit. Plus, he has really stupid-looking ears. That takes talent to just accept that.
And the fun thing is that now with James Gunn in charge of the DC universe, we can maybe explore all of the things that he said about the other heroes, like Aquaman's fish fetish that was already referenced on screen there, and Superman's alleged poop fetish. Like, wait for James Gunn to explore all these things.
Aquaman and Ezra unfortunately appeared at the very end, but that was so funny that the A-team showed up at the very end and they weren't needed.